Night. This is kind of like a baseball theme nights.
Yeah, we want to give you what you, I mean, we want to have this conversation so
Yeah,
you
for
have
sure.
direction.
Yeah, that's what these meetings are for, is so it's one topic. So one thing, I'll say it when we're live. All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the February 3rd, 2025 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors workshop meeting to order at 7 p.m. In attendance are myself, Chairman David Gerstenhaber, Vice Chair Donna D., and Supervisors Jim Johnson and Betsy Odgers. I can't see did Dawn join us? And Dawn Dowling. And Melissa Ortega, our township business manager. Who did I miss? Township Secretary Stacy Hollis, and there are, I think, no members of the public in attendance.
Here, I don't know if that counts.
I don't know if that. We'll say one. We'll say one member of the public. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you very much. So let's open the floor to public comment. Not seeing any public comment, we can move on to business. So tonight we are talking, we have one major topic, which is Lexington Point. We're going to talk a bit about really our situation with getting the sewer treatment system online and how it applies to future building of houses and what that timeline might be. We like to do this in a workshop meeting because it gives us kind of a chance to have one meeting devoted to one topic and we can just talk, go through the issues. One thing that I should say is when we first started these meetings, we let the public know that we don't make final decisions here. We just gather the information, get us all on the same page, and then we make any final vote at the very next Board of Supervisors meeting. A couple of reasons for that, but the main one is that's our official business meeting, and that's where most of the township pays attention and comes to. So with that, I don't know if who would like to start off on the conversation. Donna?
So I was thinking, just to put it out there, there's a piece of work regarding user fees that the books presented, I think, a very thorough discussion in terms of what those costs are and what the proposed user fees would be. And I was wondering that maybe we start there, because I don't think that's going to be a long contentious issue, because it's really, we're counting on Stan and Lexington Point to say you guys agree. I don't even know if you've had a chance to look at them. But it seems like, based on my review, that you picked up everything that's could be possible there. So I would like, if we could maybe look at that first, and then because that's such a big milestone in order to get us to the next one, which is when do we start issuing the permits. I think we can start there. So is that right? Please, Stan. Stan, maybe you present it, or just maybe give background and tell. I'm assuming you're going to say you're comfortable with the numbers and whatever, and then we can talk about, the board can talk about and see if we agree.
Sure. Excuse me, the board received a letter from us along with an accompanying table describing and illustrating all the costs for the O&M budget, excuse me, which is the math that leads us to a sewer user fee. The table that was attached to that is pretty detailed. It lists the data sources and assumptions for every line item. It's something that I think has been vetted very thoroughly. There's been a lot of assistance with EEMA. They contribute a lot of numbers. We had some back and forth to refine some of them with our boots on the ground experience. That's certainly invaluable. I think at this point, I believe we've got a good set of numbers. I did have a discussion with Melissa earlier, and Melissa, I would encourage you to jump in if I'm misspeaking, but I understand from her perspective, she has no questions or concerns with the budget.
And I also looked at the numbers today, and I think this is, once again, the board should tell me what you think, but as a person, as someone who manages a budget for my home, I can't stand it if someone says it's going to cost you $200 and then next year it's already 250 in the following. Like I got, if we can agree, and we're not breaking any rules, I'd like to set a number that may be slightly higher than what you have here. So that we get a sense that maybe it'll be good for a couple, maybe 3 or 4 years. And what I would, where just for just as an example, if you go to table 2 when you're in our books, if you take all the numbers that Stan and Lexington Point put together, I think it comes to a total cost of $81,827 per year. And that if you break it all down, and I would definitely go with the maximum. I would go with the cost with the subcontracted services, because I don't want to have our staff be required to do something if it's something that takes additional time and effort and they're not comfortable doing. So they may change their minds, but worst case, let's take the worst case numbers. So take that, the estimate, it says $81,827.50. And I think the way it's worked out, that would cost maybe about $179.45 a month. What I would suggest is that we make it either $200 a month or $195 a month. And that would get us back to just a little, to be just a little bit of a cushion in there, and maybe we could hold that number for a number of years.
I agree, rounding is certainly appropriate, because there's a lot of, this is nothing but estimates. The real world is going to shake down over the first few years of operation. I think rounding up on a monthly basis from 179 to 200 might be a bit much, because and I'm wearing my resident hat, for example. This, a sewer fund like this, a general term for it is an enterprise fund. It needs to be self-sustaining and not profitable. If all the data we have right now says that $200 a month is going to be profitable, if I was a resident, I would have questions.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it profit. I would just throw it back into the fund. Like I don't look at it as
I was going to say
profitable.
the same thing, Donna.
Yeah.
Generally, what happens is there's reconciliation at the end of a year period or something like that, and then the rates get adjusted for the next year.
Or you just put it in a cushion, but it goes into some kind
Yeah.
of,
Or that.
the fund.
You could build it up like
Right.
that too. Yeah.
So maybe 195, because it sounds better than 200, but.
And I'm sorry, just one other point of clarification. The typical method of billing would be quarterly. We're talking monthly costs. So, it's certainly at the township's discretion if you wanted to do it monthly. But the typical method would be quarterly. It'd be a lot less burdensome on Melissa if you did that as well. Yeah.
So that would be 585. So 585 instead of 600, maybe that, I just know things are going to go up, and they're going to go up. And we don't have 38 houses either. I know Lexington Point's going to help with the difference, but I think if it won't be a profit, we're not going to sack the money away and put it somewhere else. It will stay in the Lexington Point budget. Hey, Melissa, maybe can you, Melissa, are you there? Can you comment? Or what are your feelings about this?
I just don't think we should stockpile money away because it's all auditable. I just feel like the budget we come up with, we should stick to, and quarterly billing. So 38 houses in the long term times 4 times a year. I just don't want to have a stockpile of money that gains interest, and I have to answer to that for an audit, because I'm seeing what that does for with the PennDOT stuff. So,
but I guess I don't look at it as a stock. I would be like, so it's 81,000 is what 80. It's actually 82,000 is what if everything is exactly as we say, it's going to be 82,000. Jim, you guys are businessmen. Plus or minus 10%. I'm thinking I don't think that's unreasonable to have a margin of 10%. And then I don't know how you guys do your expenses.
It's usually, I mean, for us, it's plus or minus 10% for these kinds of budgets. So
If I could offer some additional thoughts about the safety factor that's kind of built into this, if you will. You'll note the budget is generally broken down 2 categories: operating expenses and annual funding for an operating reserve. The intent of that second category, it's things that I'm going to use extremes. We might have $0 one year. We might have double this estimate the next year. The intent of that is that annual funding comes out of the budget each and every year, and it will build up in years that the costs are less than we anticipate them to be. So that's going to, that's a way of spreading out those costs where, and it came up in my discussions with Jeff about snow removal, for example, because if any of us can project Mother Nature, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. So that does leave the township, I think, a little bit more of a buffer, if you will, to build up some reserves.
But what if you need to use them all? Like, what if you get hit in something?
Initially, I think I would not be surprised if in the first year of operations, very little of that is used. A lot of it is you know, minor maintenance and repair. This is all new stuff. It's on Keystone to be getting all that stuff in shape before the township takes over operations. The likelihood of the operator having to go out there in the first year and repair things on brand new stuff that's been thoroughly vetted beforehand is probably pretty slim. So you know, I can't predict the future, but I think it's likely there will be a surplus in the first year.
I mean, right now, we're talking, since we want to talk quarterly, we're talking 538, 34. We're not going to go 538, 34. We're going to go with another number, right? So it could be 550, it could be 575, it could be 560. I don't know. Does any of the board, you guys have a sense of where you?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to make an estimate for this kind of a number, right? Other than what feels good, you know? And so, you know, if you talk about 10%, right, what that'll be about what, 590 or something like that,
Yeah,
close.
it's going 585.
Now, I guess the question is, there's a couple. One is, do we have any comparables that we can point to for other townships who are in similar situations and how they run their system? Is it plus or minus 10%? Is it?
No, I don't think there's good ones. I mean, small systems like this are all somewhat unique. They have their own costs on it.
But I mean, I guess what I'm saying is so right now we have an estimate of 538, and we know that nothing is ever static so how do you say, I mean, my rule of thumb is we always add 10%, right? That's on any project that I've ever worked on, it's, you know, if you're within 10%, you're doing a good job. So, you know, I would suggest just going to 10% over what this estimate is, and then either thinking about a reciprocity at the end of the year, or if it's, you know, I think Melissa, you'd mentioned there's an issue with this, or if we put it into a fund for disaster on the system, whatever is legal. But to your point, we're not trying to unfairly burden our residents. But yeah,
Correct.
I'm
also,
okay. Go ahead.
Also, my question is to Stan, what is the time frame for the replacement revenue if we overspend? So how many years do we have that replacement revenue that they'll have to cover?
I'm not sure I understand that. Are you talking about the annual operating reserve funding?
Yes. So how long is that in place for if we overexpend with the expenses outside of the budget?
That annual funding is in place unless and until the board adopts a budget that changes it. So that amount, if you spend less, is going to continue to build up year after year. If you spend more in some years, of course, any surplus will be consumed. I think it's likely that after several years of operation, and it's not going to happen after the first year of operation, it's going to have to be years where things start getting older. We have a winter with a hellacious snowstorm. You have a better feel for the long-term stuff. It's likely those numbers could be adjusted.
Right. But if we operate on a deficit the first year the plant's in operation, we do get the income replacement coming back from Lexington Point.
Yeah, I think Melissa, are you talking about if the people don't pay their user fee, or you're saying if there's so I know we have access to 5 years, right? If they don't pay the user fee, Lexington Point's going to help us with that, right?
That's a maximum period.
Maximum.
The way the agreement is written is the system has to reach a point where the budget is breaking even, and it has to do that for a period. I think it's at least 2 successive quarters. Until we reach that point, Keystone is on the hook to fund any deficit, and the maximum for that period is 5 years. Yeah.
Thanks.
So can we agree Jim, yeah.
Just a question. The operating reserve fund can build indefinitely, or is there a limit that you cut off? And then we
I would rely on Melissa's expertise as controller a little bit, but yeah, in theory, it could build indefinitely, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I would imagine the board, if hypothetically, let's say 10 years from now, you realize, you know, we're building up a lot of money there. Maybe, yeah, maybe we need to cut that annual funding. Yeah.
Right. And I think we'll get that number over years of, I mean, what does it take, 6 years to get a good baseline?
Yeah, that's probably not an unreasonable ballpark.
Oh,
So Jim, do you have a number you're comfortable with on a quarterly basis? 830.
So 10% is 592.2.
I'm okay with 590. If you want to go there,
Yeah.
between 580 and 590,
Yeah.
I don't, that's,
So could you,
Yeah, 5.9, 10% over what the estimate is.
Yeah.
So can you, you still haven't, excellent point, you really haven't had your chance to look at all this stuff, but we're,
I have.
okay,
I was reading this last week, Stan sent it over.
okay, how do you
You
feel?
know, well, you know, obviously, I'd want it lower because we want to sell these units and
Mhm.
we want people who have contracts feel comfortable with the numbers. You know, I think something too, like, there is expansion capacity for this treatment plant, so. Like, the township will be able to use this for other treatment if there's a development or something.
No, it's not gonna
right?
happen.
Okay, I thought that was the purpose for some of the reserves and stuff, but.
No,
okay.
no, it's designed solely for these 38 amps, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I have no reason to doubt Stan's numbers. I think it came very, very close to what was presumed, assumed already.
Okay,
So I didn't look at this and go, wait a minute, that sounds outlandish to me. So I think what you're saying is obviously I'd like to go on the closer to 580 than the 590. Because then you're looking at a year, I mean, it's $2,200 of fees per year for sewer alone. So I just think if you put yourself in a homeowner's position and they look at that, they're not looking monthly, they're not looking quarterly, they're looking at the year and going, wow, that's a lot of charges there. So.
Yeah, so that, I mean, it's 10% over what this estimate is, so it's 2368 versus 2153. I mean, but at the end of the day, it's the cost of running the equipment, right? Like it's expensive, but that's what the cost is, and I think, I don't know what else to do there,
yeah.
we don't have, the township is certainly not going to be, if again, we're talking, low likelihood, but if there's a catastrophic failure or we need to really do some serious repairs, would a resident rather have a giant bill they weren't prepared for, or we have this fund that we can pull from that they've been putting in a little bit at a time over years, So, I mean, you're thinking next 2 years, I'm thinking the next 10 years.
Yeah, I got you.
You know?
I think 10% is not an outlandish number to try to build a reserve.
Okay.
So we're suggesting 190, is that what we're gonna go with?
I'm
sorry, wait, I'm sorry, my mistake.
I'm gonna suggest 590. It's a little under 10%, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a little less than what we count, yeah.
Betsy, we haven't heard from you or Dawn. What are you thinking?
I think it makes sense to have a cushion in there for me.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what it's going to be, and it can always be changed afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'd rather start above the number and come down if that happens, but I doubt it.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
And I don't want to belabor the point, but just to be crystal clear, Mickey, the agreement between the township and Keystone does give Keystone a vote in these rates, essentially. So I know you just indicated that 590 would likely be acceptable. I just wanted to say that. Okay. Yeah.
I think we can sit here and argue about we can argue about 570, 580, 600, 600. I mean, we could argue, but I think it's a good middle point. And like you said, in 2 or 3 years, if you're starting to see the reserves build up and we're able to turn over these units like we expect we will, then there's always a chance to revisit that later.
Mhm.
That brings up a point that I wanted to make too. First, we don't even, this is an estimate. We don't even have a year's worth of fees or cost. So that'll give us a few years to look at that. And then Stan, this number, the 538, whatever it is based on all 38
Correct.
all 38 homes being filled.
Correct.
So what happens until they're filled? I want
These guys are hoping so.
Keystone is
Oh,
paying any shortfall.
Okay, they pay the remainder. Okay,
Yeah.
that's, I just wanted to know that. Okay.
Okay, so this was I thought this was the easy part. So, but this is an important piece, right? You need this because, okay, we're good here?
Sure. If I, question to the board, is it appropriate to ask the township solicitor to prepare a draft resolution, which would be the means of adopting these rates?
That's the next month.
That's right. For the next township meeting, for sure.
Okay. If it's okay, I'd be happy to touch base with Guy. I likely have some other questions about him anyway. Of course, we'll copy township on it, yeah.
This is kind of what Dave was saying before. We do this meeting to talk about things and then it will be a very short discussion at the next meeting to say, okay, this is, someone read this and agree, and then it's done. And then you have that, and it's one more milestone off the table that you can check and say it's done.
Now, so just so I'm clear, so the shortfall of the operational budget, depending on how many units are left, are we talking that Keystone will be paying 500 a month up to those 38 units until such time as they're done, or we just putting that money into the, like, obviously that's $600 times the amount of houses that we haven't sold yet and built yet. So what would Keystone's quarterly contribution be from the point that the resolution is approved?
Per the agreement, it would be the budget deficit, not necessarily paying that same rate as those unbuilt homes are paying.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I know it just sounds twisted, but it's actually the higher we go, the better it is for you because that's less money, because you're going to make up the difference, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the operation fee is, and the more, yeah. You got to stop giving stuff. All right. So you want to talk about the options or?
Yes, let's go through the options.
Can you, I created a table. I based it on the documents that were in the packet to the best of my understanding, but I'm not telling you it's 100% correct. I made some assumptions, but if you could show that. And I had sent this table to the board, and Stan, you should have a copy of it. So I looked at, I want to look at what the current timeline is based on our current plan, our current milestone plan. Yeah, hold on for a second.
I can.
They lost one.
Yeah, I don't want to make her go out.
Oh, okay, gosh.
Oh, I'm not. Okay. All right.
From that side.
All right.
Oh, no, we're locked in.
All right. So the first column is in my best understanding of if nothing changes, if we keep our milestone agreement as it currently sits, this is what's going to look like. And and then I looked at an option one, which would probably be the system where we actually issue building permits very quickly. And another option two is where we put the system in service first and then issue building permits. So I just wanted to go through option one and just get comments from both Stan and Lexington Point in case I've made some mistakes. And for all the options, based on feedback from Stan, he strongly suggested that we make sure that before we do anything, we make sure that we've developed and established the system operating reserve fund and got this financial stuff out of the way. And that's why this knowing what the user fee amount was so important, because it's going to help you guys figure out what these numbers are and then get those monies put where they need to be put. So I have no idea what the timeline is for that for us, what the timeline is for that, but that is between Lexington Point and Stan to figure that out. I think it's probably more in Lexington Point to make sure that happens. And then once that happens, we can put the system into service. So the system needs to be put into service. Once again, I don't know how much time that's going to take to get the system in service. We have the table that Stan has given us that I know you have it in your book. I have it here. This table that has all the little checkpoints. I think there's a guess at maybe about 2 months. Maybe it could go faster, but just 2 months, I don't know if that feels
Well,
about right.
We have DEP is wave testing of the
That's
treatment
good,
plant.
right.
So that's one thing that I was mostly concerned with.
Right.
And Stan was helpful with this as well. We have, I think, the 17th of February. 21st, okay, was 4 days off. That they're gonna come out and test the drip fields.
Okay.
So once that, and I think that's just flushing the lines, make sure that they're not clogged and doing what they should be doing. At that point, we should have the approval to start turning it on and making sure everything's working and operating, correct?
Not necessarily, no. There's still some other things. I had met with Dave Kutz out there a week ago Friday, I guess, and there's some odds and ends that he needs to get done. He could probably have that done in a couple of weeks, but but there are some other things that need to be addressed. So it's not it wouldn't be a matter of saying, okay, let's go ahead and proceed towards startup or placing it in service that day. It could happen fairly quickly, but we also have, as Don was pointing out, the other legal administrative stuff, some resolving a few easements, the operating reserve, financial security, other things that are charted out there as well.
Okay.
I would guess those things could be resolved fairly quickly, though.
Okay, so I know Guy's not here, but I think we have submitted all of the easements that we are aware of to him for his review and approval. And I know you guys talk and go bounce back and forth, but I think we've sent a blanket easement, or that was sent, I believe.
I don't know. I didn't see it.
Okay. But there's been some documents that we've sent out there, and Riley Notzel from Barley Snyder has been helping us with that. And we're kind of waiting, I think, for a thumbs up, thumbs down as to the interaction with those documents, because in my mind, that could be done by the end of this week in terms of getting those drafts into the township's hands for their approval. So for me, I'm the lawyer, so I want to take care of all the legal stuff.
Sure.
So that we're not bogged down later on by that.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm aware of that I think is still outstanding anyway is for the access easement through lot 25. We're still looking for exhibit with bearings and distances and legal description for that.
We have that.
Oh, okay.
I think it's been sent to Guy. If not, I can make sure a copy of that gets recycled tomorrow, but we've had that done.
Oh, okay. Wasn't aware of that.
So Hal prepared the exhibit and prepared the bearings and everything on that too. So we've made that part of the exhibit and a part of the easement.
Okay, great.
The only thing that I am trying to do for the benefit of that neighbor, they're an equitable owner right now. We're still the owner of it until settlement, but I want them to sign off on it so that there could be no discussion later on that they are unaware. And they have given us the tacit authority that they're good with it. So, which we appreciate.
Mhm.
So I don't know, Stacy, is there an action that we can take we got to make sure Guy has what Guy needs to have? I don't know if you want to do it or Jeff's going to do it with someone. I thought he was going to be here tonight. I guess we got mixed up or something, but.
If I may suggest, Donna, I mentioned I was going to follow up with Guy about the resolution.
Online. Vince is online.
Oh, excellent.
I'm here in lieu of Guy. Big shoes to fill, but I cannot speak to whether he has in hand the necessary easements for review.
Thank you, Vince. What I was going to suggest is I'm going to be following with Guy anyway. I can include in that email a listing of the status of all the easements and the status per our records anyway, and ask him to clarify where everything stands and what needs to be done.
Just a comment. I thought the way your group and our group worked together to get that amendment together, like I think you did it in a day or two, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is totally up to you guys, but if you can move that fast, maybe we can get the system up and running, because that's going to really, it's really when the system gets put in service impacts what option we go with and how we help the potential homeowners. So I'm not involved in that. I mean, you guys have to figure it out. You know what needs to be done. You have the table. You know what you need. You know what needs to be done. You guys get together and work with that kind of.
So I'd recommend between Stan, Guy, Riley, myself, if we can take a 30-minute meeting, Zoom meeting this week, and just authorize everybody to be able to be there and then make some recommendations, because obviously they have to come here. But I'd like to get them done this week so that you have time to review it, so that the next township meeting, it'll be done and there won't be any questions, or if there are, we can worry about those in the interlude and make sure that we're ready to go for that meeting.
And the key milestone would be DEP coming out to do the irrigation, because you have that sitting there, right? And if you can get all this stuff lined up beforehand,
Exactly.
that's just going to make things a
Exactly.
lot easier.
And as we're talking about various ducks to get in a row, we were just talking about the projected user fees. The board adoption of those is one of those key ducks that we need to get in a row. So
But
that,
you know where we're going, so we'll do that
yes,
next
yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
All right. So back to the initial timeline. This is, we're not changing anything. You put the system in service, and that can be, I put down approximately 2 months, but could go even faster, depending on what you guys are doing. And then the next big key milestone is that the plant has to run for 3 months. And assuming we have no issues, then a certificate of final completion is issued. And that is the key milestone that allows then the building permits to be issued. So it's actually, not that it's simple, but relatively speaking, these are the steps. You put the system in service, it stays in service for 3 months, Stan's happy. He creates, I take it, you put someone creates a certificate of final completion, and then the building permits can get issued. And that's for the next 4 houses. And in terms of that, there's some contribution that needs to be done, some capital recovery contribution that needs to be put in there. I'm assuming that after that, it takes about 4 months to complete a house. I have no idea. I'm just guessing on what the record. So that's another 4 months. So, then I'm looking based on the current program, you're seeing a house, maybe your house being built and someone to be able to move into it in anywhere from 7 to 9 months, depending on how fast you can get the system into service. Is that feels about right to you? Okay.
Yeah.
So that is like, we're not changing anything. This is the way it is. Okay, so now another option, this is the really expedited option, is that we have to, this stuff has to get done, right? This financial stuff has to get done. That's the first box. You get the operating accounts and the security deposit, all that money stuff is done. And then once that's done, the building permits are issued for 4 houses. And along with that capital recovery contribution. And then after that, the system is put in service. You have 3 months to get that certificate of final completion. It takes about 4 months to complete the houses. And if everything works out perfectly, and nothing ever does, but say it does work out perfectly, at the most, you probably have a house empty for maybe 1 to 2 months. It all depends on how long it takes to get the system in service. If it goes really quickly, the houses won't be empty at all, because it takes longer to build a house than it does to do certificate of final completion. But it all depends on how fast we can get the system in service. So that's one option. That's like the really expedited option. And then another option for us to consider is putting, once again, I'm in the last column. You have to get the money stuff done. You put the system in service, and we're talking about maybe we can get that done in a month, 2 months at the most. Then we issue the building permits. So we get the building permits out there for 4 houses, and the houses are being built in parallel with the system operating for the 15 houses that are already out there. And remember, we have a 3-month window for if everything's going well, then that certificate of final completion gets issued. The houses get completed a month later, and you get your certificates of occupancy, and you can move in the house. And it all comes back, depending on how fast you can put the system in service. Because if you can put the system in service within that 1 month, 2 month period, the second option, the last column, is almost as fast as the middle one, and there's no risk on the township, and it doesn't have the houses sitting empty. So those are just standard. These are actually Stan's options. I just put them in the table, but I'm just going to open it up for the board to discuss and just see where they're at.
If I could offer maybe just a little bit more perspective for the board to consider your questions. I think, yeah, as I think the board is aware, anything other than what is in the current milestone agreement is going to require amendment to the wastewater treatment plant agreement. And that's probably a very simple amendment. It's just drafting new milestones. And we can craft the milestones, I think, to protect the township very well. The only unknown is going to be time for homes to potentially sit vacant while they could be occupied, and homeowners then being frustrated. And there's nothing that we can necessarily control over that. And I know you've taken time to try and guess what might happen with that, but I think that's really, I would suggest the board look at possible amendment to the treatment plan amendment. With that is really the key issue. What is the township's comfort level in finding itself in that situation? Guy had suggested via email, which I believe the board has seen, some hold harmless language that may be an agreement that both Keystone and the buyers would sign, that to my non-lawyer brain seems really thorough and protects the township and serves notice to everybody that, hey, we can't guarantee timing for the issuance of certificate of occupancy. I may give the board some comfort level in struggling with those situations.
That's regardless. So we have the two options laid out here. You're saying regardless of the two options that we're discussing here, we need to have that letter signed to say certificate of occupancy is not set in stone. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take however much, 3 months.
What's laid out in the option, right?
Right. So each one of these certificate, options 1 and 2, it says 3 months for final certificate of final completion issued.
Well,
No, that's not certificate of occupancy.
That's 3
Yeah,
months.
and-
Yeah, so the certificate of occupancy takes a period of time. Is that what you're saying? And that period of time is variable.
And I'm sorry, I think I misspoke. I believe, and I certainly don't want to speak for Guy, I believe that language he provided would have been a scenario under what, Donna, what you have is expedited timeline, option 1. Correct.
Yeah.
So in the second column, depending on how, say that, if you look at the second column and you see how I highlighted system and service, say if something horrible happens and it takes 5 months for the system to get in service, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, you have everything's delayed and these houses are being built.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a potential that the house could sit vacant for 3 months.
Yeah.
You'll get that. You won't get that with the first option, the current option. It won't happen, right? And it won't happen in the last option because the system's put in service.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're putting the permit out there before the system in service, it all depends what it's going to take to get the system in service. And that's why the conversation we had earlier was important, because it sounds like, well, the mountain isn't as high as it was a year ago, right? You're knocking stuff off.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of questions, but one of them, and I guess the question, maybe it's for Vince, part of this, but the issue that I'm having is one where, this agreement is contingent on making sure that the system is in service before any future houses are built, right? And we want to make sure, and the reason for that is we want to make sure the system works, that it's operating as we expected, that it's passing whatever regulations that it needs to pass, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is where your letter comes in. We want to have this indemnification letter, because there's no guarantee that once the system gets put into place, that it's going to be fully operational, that it's going to take 3 months, there's going to be no issues. And now there's 4 houses that are empty, that now these residents are saying, well, why can't I move into my house? And who knows what the timeline's going to be, right? It seems like it's very messy that way. So that's the question.
And we're just waiting for we're just waiting for the system to go in place to get a CO.
And so
System in place for 3 months. So it has to be in place and
Waiting
3 months.
for that,
Right.
that.
Well, and I think what I think is kind of Dave's point is it's not necessarily 3 months. That's
it could, right.
that's a minimum 90-day
The
period.
3
if-
months, everything's perfect.
Correct. yeah.
But isn't that the time that the township would take over? But we would be operating it as Keystone. And
No,
that's-
you're not up. We're not taking over for another year.
You're
Okay.
taking, no, that,
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's the point. Like, we're the ones that have that onus of responsibility of running this plant while we're building these houses. So we're incentivized to make sure that this thing doesn't sit and link, because we can't go to settlement on houses that can't get COs and we can't occupy, because that usually happens within an amount of time. So,
Mhm.
I think you'd be even more motivated if you had to put the system in for service first, right?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that doesn't
So
help anybody here.
So why four?
No, I disagree.
No, yeah.
It does help. You take the 3 months because just, I mean, I know it's not ideal, but you put this, if you say system and service issue permits, that saves you at least 3 months because you're not waiting for this. So it helps. It's not, doesn't help as
That's
much
what
as
I
you want.
meant.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. The acceleration helps us.
And I'm sorry if I could just, and I'm not sure that it's what you meant, Dave, but the township will be taking over operational control, not ownership, but operational control after that nominal 90-day period.
Right, yes.
It's
Yes.
not dedicated to.
It's financial. We're not on the hook financially until it's a full 12.
Well, at that point, Melissa would start handling the budget and the township would be running it financially, but not owning it.
Yeah.
Right, if there's any
That's what.
gaps, right, gaps. So we have our big brother behind
So then
us.
the other question I have is why 4 houses? Why not the rest of them? Like, why are we talking about 4 houses? Why not? Like, so my point is, it's like, what we're talking about is, do we just let you build? Do we change the agreement and just let you build as many houses as you can, as quickly as you can? And then we'll hope for the best as the
Okay, so may I answer that?
Yeah.
Okay, because you hit it to the heart of what I was, one of the reasons I was here tonight. So we're not building, like, we're not a national, whatever the letters are of those homes that are just kind of prefab. We plop it in there, we move to the next one.
Mhm.
Like, we are a semi-custom home builder. And the owners have gone through a rigorous process whereby they've fitted out their own home, not only on the interiors with what fixtures and finishes, but also the exterior with bump outs and garages and all these things. So these homes take time to, it's not like we have a plant where we just drop a foundation in and we move to the next.
Mhm.
We have to mobilize all of our trades to come out. And what we'd like to do is have a foundation, get the foundation in, start on the next one, and almost, it's like an assembly line of tradesmen coming in and out of these.
Mhm.
And it's more money and more time for us to mobilize excavators to come and wait 2 months and then have them come back out to do another foundation and then come back. So the efficiency of the economies of scale is beneficial if we can just go and knock these things out. The custom nature isn't like these houses can get turned around in 30 days, 60 days. We're looking 90 days, 120 days, and that's working days. That's not counting weekends and not. So
Yeah.
we're looking at a 4-month plus, depending on how complex the house is, depending on what trades are out there, depending on what supplies and materials are out there. So my suggestion would, and we wouldn't start 12 houses at the exact same time because we don't have the labor force in which to do that. We have a finite amount of tradesmen that can build these houses. We might do 2 or 3 framing at the same time, but we're not going to do 6 or 7 or 8. Right.
So it just doesn't make sense for Keystone to go out and ask for the 36 or 32 remaining houses. 18 houses left?
18 or.
Yeah, it's like
18 houses.
Yeah.
38 total.
Yeah.
What we would like to do is at least get the building permits in for all of the people that we have contracted houses for. Right. And I don't know what the number is off the top of my head. Let's say it's maybe 10 or 11 or whatever that number would be. Because since I've been sitting here, I've received 5 text messages for people because they're very interested in what I have to say after the result of this meeting tonight.
So you have how many people who are waiting for this decision?
I think we might have 6 to 9 pending building permits that have been out. I think there's 6 that are in, but only 4 that is in the review stage because the township won't review any more building permits until that metric has been met to the timeline.
So
And that takes time for the township to review the building plans. And that's, it's not something like they're, okay, one day you get a rubber stamp on it. I mean, you have to look and make sure it meets all the codes and all of those as well.
So I guess I apologize if this sounds snarky, but you said issued 4 you have permit issued for 4 houses, but you're just getting text messages by like 9 different people.
Yeah.
Why isn't that number 9? Because you can't do 9 at once, or?
No, it's just because this building
You know what I mean?
permit, yeah, because the township won't process the building permits until the timeline of that original agreement is. So we have signed contracts with future home buyers that are in limbo right now because those building permits can't get processed through the township.
Right. Okay.
So if they were approved, and I'm assuming that the building permits we would be submitting would be approved. I'm not thinking that they wouldn't, but still there is a timeline of when these houses can be started because of the trade. So let's just say we start the foundations. It's going to take 2 to 3 weeks for foundations in. That's one house, and it would go down. So by the time you add up all the timeline of the building permits, like we have excavators out at the site for 2.5, 3 months. And then our other trades come in, putting utilities in, and it just takes time for all those things to occur. So I don't have an absolute schedule. I think I gave Stan, and that was all predicated upon a February start. I just kind of guessed what that is. And roughly we would be starting 2 homes or 3 homes a month, depending on building permits getting approved. So I have an individual in New Jersey right now. Like I think we added up the contracts, like the date of the earliest contract and like he's number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so he's absolutely very, and these people are renting homes, renting apartments, waiting for this timeline to start. So what I'm offering, if I'm really offering anything, or at least asking, is if we are going to accept the hold harmless and accept that responsibility on our end, then I don't think the township is at risk. If these houses sit for 2 or 3 months, which I don't think they will, but if they sit for any length of time, we're still the ones at risk here as a company, and you still have the ultimate control of that certificate of occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
If the plant's not operating, then you obviously can't give a CO because there's no sewage and water for those houses.
When is the system? When is the start date? When we're supposed to put the system in place? What's the estimate?
The system, so we're saying that's what we've been talking about. We said about 2 months.
2 months from today.
If everything goes in place, that would be 1 month to 2 months. I mean, it all depends.
Yeah.
So, all right.
And my assumption is
2 months from today.
Correct.
So April. You're saying in April we're going.
It's possible based on everything that we said before that DEP is coming out in February. You have to get the finance stuff done. You have Stan's table, right? There's stuff here that is in our control and Lexington Point's control, along with Guy. That it can get done. Nothing's holding it up. Like they're not waiting for a DEP inspection. There's things in here that can get done. It's just a matter of these guys sitting down, just like and knocking it out and making it happen. But it's possible. It could be 2 months, maybe a little less, depending on how fast. Push it. The one milestone you can't get in front of is the DEP coming out in mid-February. But you have that date. That's great.
Correct. And I would say, like, looking at Stan's list, the only thing that is concerning to me, which is probably not a high priority, is he's made a comment about the landscaping plan needs to be revisited because of the easements and something. So, I'm authorizing my engineers to make sure that landscaping plan meets, whatever the approval would be for Stan. And I have to make Stan happy and make the township happy, or else that wouldn't get approved. That could be a holdup. I don't think it's going to be, because it's landscaping, and what are we going to do? Argue about a tree or a plant or something? But that just takes time for a plan to be prepared, for Stan to review it, for him to let the township know what his thoughts are, or whatever it is, and then we go from there.
So I'm trying to think of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, not to detour a whole lot, but I had a discussion with Dave McGow out there when I was meeting with Dave Kutz, and clarified that if he could just do a hand markup of the approved landscaping plan, indicating the locations and species that he's proposing to change. I wasn't suggesting that you go back and do another engineering landscape plan.
I love you, Stan. Thank you.
This
one
can
of
be done. You can keep
Yeah.
the stamp system up.
Yeah. So I guess my other question is, as I think about which option I'm leaning towards. February. When's our meeting? February 19th. February 19th. We say, okay, go ahead, build your 4 houses. How soon are you starting? Is it February 20th, or is it March 1st, or is it?
probably about a minute after the meeting. I mean, like, and again, I'm being facetious, but no, we would start the day or two after if because it takes time to mobilize, it takes time to get the tradesmen. It would be very contemporaneous to my belief that that approval will happen at that night.
Okay. So to really Donna's point here on this is it's either one, it's going to save maybe 1 or 2 months. Option 1 or 2. The big question mark is if the system, if we wait until, so we take option 2. So option 2 is the system gets put into service and it starts running and it looks good. And once it's put into service, they start building. That's going to be April or May, right? April, May time, correct? Versus probably March, right? Late February, early March for the other ones.
Right.
So if we go to option 1,
Yeah.
which is go ahead and build your houses, it starts late February, early March versus April.
Okay.
So we're saving maybe a month or 2.
Right, but I don't want to lose the fact that we're saving a lot compared to the current. Either.
No,
either
yeah. No,
option
it's
a plus for you.
It's like 9 months. So the original plan is 9 months.
Right. Yeah.
And either option, if everything goes smoothly, brings that down to 4 months.
Right.
That's 5 months. That's a significant acceleration. Okay.
And that's the difference between someone moving in August or September and having their children in for the school year, or coming in December and having, a mid-year family shakeup.
But the point that I think David's making is something that keeps sitting in my mind. The last column, the option 2, if you get this thing up and running, and I know this is a big, and there's no issues. There really is not that much a difference between the last column and the middle column. The big difference comes in is if you put the thing, if there's a problem putting it in service and we get into a hiccup.
And that's going to extend both timelines.
Well, right, but it actually puts the risk on the town. Well, no, it's not, I shouldn't say it, because it puts the risk on you because you'll have houses sitting empty.
Yeah.
If you go with the one where you're building the permits before the systems and stuff. But just one more comment. But I think, Dave, you made a really good point. I think this is something I know has been bugging you, Jim, but I think we all need to be aware of it. We're not talking 4 houses. We're talking, once we make this decision, we go. I mean, it's going to be a go. And that's, and just, I'm sorry, one more point. That's not necessarily a bad thing for the system, because the system needs waste. It's a good thing to have waste. So this is not, it's not like this is awful. This is actually, would be a good thing. But people know this is not, we're not talking 4 houses now. You go.
And I think, I think the other thing to think about, and this is where I wanted our solicitors' help here, is, just to put it bluntly, making sure that making sure builders are held accountable for what they say they're going to do. Best way to do that is come up with an agreement like we originally had, which is you're not going to build houses until you do what you said you were going to do for the township. And my concern is we're basically saying, all right, well, what we're going to do is give up any leverage that we have in terms of making sure that, and I'm not disparaging Keystone in any way.
Understood.
Any leverage the township might have in correcting potential problems with the development.
We're
right?
assuring that it's going to be working.
Or ensuring that's going to be working. And then what happens is you now have a bunch of angry residents turning to the township saying, how come you let this happen? So I guess the question is, for Vince, is, when you think about our agreement as it's originally stated, and then the kind of options that we're considering, what kind of overall risk to the township, or how does it change the complexion of the original agreement that we as a board should be aware of? I think that's my major concern.
Well, I think the original agreement certainly put the risk on the developer with with very, tight requirements for the building of additional houses. There could be circumstances which the board is considering to allow additional houses to be built, considering where the system is today, which, we've been talking about that tonight. Yes, there are other milestones that still need to be reached on Stan's chart, which still need to be checked off. And I think we should still be continuing down that road. Our recommendation has been, and it would continue to be, that we need to have a sign off from not only the developer, but the prospective purchasers on attempting to shift as much of the risk as possible off the township, risks that we don't have right now, in the event that something goes wrong and we are not in the position to issue the use and occupancy permits. And, the township doesn't want to be in that position. There will be a lot at stake, if you will, if that occurs, meaning that folks that are not here tonight, meaning these new purchasers, will have potentially, changed their lives based on an expectation of when their house is going to be completed. And I certainly wouldn't want to be in the position of a supervisor where things don't go exactly correct. Yes, we have agreements in place, to say that it's at the risk of the developer and the prospective homeowners. But everything's done. The house is ready to go. The moving van otherwise could pull up, but something goes wrong relative to the sewage system. I think it's, no one wants to be in that position. I wouldn't want the supervisors to be in that position. I'm not saying that's a huge risk, but I'm saying that, I'm offering out there that there is a risk to that. Bottom line is, we would not recommend going forward without having every prospective homeowner signing a piece of paper that recognizes that the risk is on them, releasing the township from liability, and making certain that the fingers can't be pointed to the township. But the fact of the matter is, if things don't work out, that's what's going to happen.
So if I were able to, I'm going to be a little greedy here. If I were able to get those individuals who have contracts in place with Keystone to sign off on an agreement, and again, we're the ones who have to manage the timeline of building because we can't start all, whatever at the same time. But if we take on that responsibility, have the future owners sign off on that for permitting purposes, we hold the township harmless for any of those issues. Would the township be willing to release more than 4 permits?
Well, we have to release the 4 to start with, but.
So I think, I think the what I'd be interested in, and maybe we can, I don't know if we'll have a chance to talk before the next meeting, but to have this letter written that indemnifies the township, that, because again, to my point about this, like, we're going to build 4 houses. I mean, we might as well not say 4 houses. We might as well just say you can begin building in earnest. Whether it's it does the same thing, right? So whether it's 4 houses or 15 houses, it doesn't really matter. It's really more about, you know, Keystone and the potential residents understanding that your house could be completed and sitting there because we're dealing with DEP regulations, or the plant isn't working correctly, or, you know,
Yeah, I think.
and are we
I
comfortable?
don't think it's more DEP regulations. I mean, there's something that
I know.
unforeseen would go along with.
Something, I don't know, something unforeseen happens and, you can't, you know, occupy the house.
For months.
If the plant wasn't there already, then I'd be less willing to take the risk on it, like, okay, we gotta build it, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. But it's been there, and I just don't expect a catastrophic issue
Right.
that would postpone this for more than a couple weeks or 3 weeks if there's a part that we need. Now, that might be my naivete, and Stan's been doing this for a lot longer than I have involving these things. But, you know, I don't see a catastrophe that would prevent that from moving forward.
So that's what gets me to this last option. And I know it's not perfect, but at least in that case, you wait till the system's in service to begin with. So you know that the system is running. And I'm not saying you have to wait 3 months, but you know that the system's running, then you start to issue the permits. That's what I know. It just seems like you've hit a milestone, and it's not that kind of a milestone that's 6 months away. It's something that can happen in 2 months or less, depending on how fast these guys can work together. I just, there's something, I don't know, maybe it's that because it's in the middle thing.
Well, it's
I-
one less,
It's like yeah.
it's
One less
one
variable.
less variable.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I know the easy way out would be don't do anything and just keep the plan as it is, but I in my heart, I feel like there's something we can do, and that's, I mean, I'm just one of five. We have to.
So I think, so we're, you know, so Betsy, Dawn, do you have any questions?
I agree with Donna that I just think if the system's working, then that's one less thing we would have to be concerned with to give the occupancy.
And it wouldn't be talking just the 4. If
Right.
the system is working, we wouldn't be arguing if it's just 4 houses. It would
Right.
open up the possibility that others.
Another good point.
Jim, what do you?
So, yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, if, well, Stan, you said that Guy had the letter already drafted, or
No, that's
oh,
just
that was a
some
different one?
language in an email that he suggested you threw out
Okay.
as an idea, which to me looked like nearly complete language, but.
Yeah, so between what Guy wrote and what Vince just said, we can probably get something drafted. Then there's the DEP test, right? For lack of a better term, I'll call it the perk or drainage test, right? That's scheduled for just a couple weeks from now. And then you said there's a few more.
There's a few more odds and ends on site. We're also gonna, when DEP is out there to do the drip testing, they're not gonna require that the manufacturer's rep for the drip system be out there. They are slated to be out there for one final run through before it gets placed in service, however. Not necessarily a big deal, but that's just one of the odds and ends that we still need to take care of, as well as the legal administrative things we've spoken about. I mean, I think I see no reason why 2 months isn't achievable, and possibly a little bit less. Yes.
Yeah, it started, right?
Yeah, and just to be clear, and as much as I like the last option, I know that's not your favorite, but there's still a risk. There is still a risk that, because we're not waiting for the system certificate of completion issued, right? Something could go wrong, and there's still,
It started up, and 2 weeks later, something blows
right,
up.
and so there's still a risk that some houses may be empty, but so you'll need that documentation that Guy's working
Yeah,
on,
still need it no matter
and we
what.
need Lexington Point to sign it and the homeowner to sign it. But like you said, the one big variable, the system at least has started to operate. You know, I mean, and before that, you'll do the test anyways, the test thing that we're gonna do. I think I know it's not exactly what you want, but I think what we're given, and I know we haven't made any decisions yet, but what it does do, though, we would agree, it's not about 4 houses, it's about go build. But it would be after there's the system has at least been put into service.
And To help the board understand, Dave, you would ask why 4 houses earlier. I think I can explain that. The way the milestones were structured, and this was going back a number of years ago, so that the next milestone after those 4 houses, one of the key things is verifying the flows per home now that we had several homes hooked up and online. The reason that that was inserted at that time is because the design flows per DEP regulations is 262.5 gallons per day per home. Don't ask me why they picked that. But when we were going through the redesign in 2017, 2018, and looking at that, we went back and tracked a long period of all the pump and haul data and compared those volumes to the number of homes that were occupied at the time. And we had a period where we were seeing over that number. So we inserted in the milestone here this check to make sure, hey, are we okay with the flows or not? I've since gone back. We've gotten a lot more pump and haul data. I've since gone back and recrunched those numbers, and it's pretty safe. I'm not concerned about that one now. No, the only concern with those homes beyond the next 4 is the same we've been discussing with those 4.
So conceivably, on the 21st, you'll have the DEP there. It passes the drip. And then there's the couple extra things. I mean, this could be in service in March.
I would hope.
If it's in
But I
service in
mean,
March, and
again, that Stan's got the more expertise than I do.
You're permitting in March.
It's possible.
I like it. I like that.
I put it back, and I know you're just one person, and you've been wonderful coming to these meetings, but just put the flame under somebody's butt. I mean, just if you work like you did for the amendment, you guys can knock this stuff out.
Well, I have what I think I have done. It's just, I have to be respectful of the attorneys here and their time to review these things, but and then Stan and has met with Dave Cuts and get the hand drawn, but I will put all pressure on everybody. I'll drag him here by the scruff if I have to, but obviously this means a lot to our future residents here. And if I were able to secure a plan or a map for them where by March, if we've done our part and the township has helped us do their part, that we could have building permits released, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. And once again, I don't know who takes that action, but I don't know how this permitting thing works, but it shouldn't be the day that March comes around and whoever does the permit says, oh, let me put that on my stack of things to do, which should be, yeah, I got the okay, I'm going. Like, that's for us doing our part.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask that if we get past the next meeting and the testing and everything, if the township staff would be released to review the pending permits while we're going through this rest of the process, that would be helpful as well.
And in the timing that we're talking about, please also consider there's going to need to be time to draft up the amendment to the wastewater treatment plan agreement, which could be fairly simple. And then, of course, time for that to come to the board before one of your meetings and formally consider it.
There's only one. I mean, this is besides all the Lexington Point activity. I wanted to bring up the billing activity. Like, how does Melissa know when is it just the day they get their CO is when they start billing the resident and not Lexington Point for the remainder of the sewage? Is it prorated by day? Is that, you know what I mean? Is it prorated by day? Does she know what, okay, here's the CO, I got it. This is the day I start billing the resident. I don't know that answer.
Typically, yeah, that is the way to approach it. But Keystone is not, Keystone is paying any budget shortfalls. They're not paying in lieu of that resident. So, they're going to see the change in shortfalls when somebody starts paying, but they're not going to have an immediate effect from that day one, though.
Yeah, I was just wondering when, and I know it's a quarterly payment, but if is it a quarterly? Is the other thing?
I would imagine.
Pro rata.
Yes, yeah.
But that's what so my question too is, do we pay a quarter in arrears or a quarter in advance? It matters. it matters, right?
Should be in advance.
That's a good question. It's normally done after, and I say that because, a typical, in this case, we've got fixed rates.
Right.
Frequently, public sewer rates will be based upon billing. You collect the billing for a quarter and you do the math and say, okay, here
Right.
it is. You bring up a very good point, though. There's no reason why it could not be done at the beginning of the quarter, though, in this case.
Okay. Something we have to talk about then. Okay.
All right. So, Betsy or Don, any other questions for us before we move on?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Kranti. I'm also one of the future residents. Thanks, Donna. I'm the one who sent you emails. Thanks for responding. So just to kind of concise and compile what we have discussed so far, what the team has discussed so far is like, are we planning to go with the second lane option where it says expedited timeline option number one?
So we don't, so yeah, so when we mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting. So this is our workshop meeting. So we will be reconvening at our normal Board of Supervisors meeting to vote on the actual option that we're going to pursue, whether it's do nothing, option 1 or option 2. And so this will be at our Board of Supervisors meeting on February 19th. We generally don't make any decisions at the workshop meeting. These meetings are specifically we pick one topic and we talk about it for the duration of the meeting, without any other distractions of other topics. So I apologize if you didn't hear that at the beginning. So to answer your question, we haven't voted yet. We will do that and make our final decision on the 19th, but there will be a final decision on the 19th. You will have your path forward, know exactly what the plan is. And then we'll make accommodations as we move from there.
But to give you a little bit of comfort, so we won't start from ground zero. So I think you've heard the conversation, right? And you heard how it's going. And though we haven't voted yet, there is a sense of maybe option 2 is something that we could consider. So I don't want you to go, you can't put in gospel, but I think am I wrong? I mean, I just got a sense, we haven't voted, but that's where the conversation went.
I wouldn't want to say anything until we actually vote on that. But to your point, we're not having this conversation again. Yeah, we're not going to go through this all again and hash it out. But I wouldn't want to talk about which way the board is leaning until we actually vote. Donna wants to make people feel good.
Well, you know where I'm going, so.
No, yeah,
I appreciate it.
I don't mean to say that to be elusive. It's really because we're not really allowed to talk about that until we actually vote and say this is what the board's going to do on an official vote. So I apologize if I'm trying to, if I seem like I'm being evasive, but I'm doing that for a reason we're not really supposed to talk about.
Sure. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I also do work for federal government, so I understand that. It's just that, we are a family, we have kids. So even though I know all the rules and regulations, there is one side of my mind that tells me that I'm a parent. So I'm curious to listen to that, but I understand that,
Yeah, no, understood. We feel you. This is why we're here talking about it, is because we know we have residents here who want to get their houses built and move in. So we wouldn't be here talking about it if we didn't have that in front of mind. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely.
You want to go? You want to take that?
After February meeting that we decide which option we would go, and then there is an amendment that needs to be filed, right? And then even that amendment, do we need to take like a board? Does it need to wait until March meeting, like March 3rd?
No, so what'll happen is our solicitor will have all the paperwork we need ready to go. And we will say, this is what we want to do. And so what we'll have ready would be a proposed amendment, right? We'll vote on a motion to say yes or no, this is what we're going to do. We're gonna vote on that. And then likely at the end of it, we'll have something to sign that approves it. And I think Guy or Vince will have the agreements for you to sign to say, I don't know, I'm thinking of them as indemnity clauses, or, the township's off the hook. To put it glibly. And then everything will get signed and done. And then from there, everyone can go forth and start whatever it is we're
Then
gonna
you're just
start.
waiting for the system to get in place. So you-
Right. And then,
But the bottom line is, we're not losing any time because these guys are gonna be working hard to get the system up and running. So really, it's not like start and stop, start and stop. It's like, I think this has been, I know we can't tell you where it's gonna go in 2 weeks, but you got a sense, right? And now you're gonna be planning for it. And you know what, you gotta get the system up and running because that's the key milestone that gets everything going.
Yeah.
But we do have to do, like you said, we have to have
motion.
the motion to approve it, and we also need the motion for the user fees, so that will all get done. It's like not even 2 weeks, or is it 2 weeks? About 2 weeks, right?
yeah, about 2 weeks.
It like Feb 19 we take the notion, but even for amendment, the notion will be taken in Feb 19th, right? We don't need to wait until March.
Everything will be taken care of on the 19th of February. This conversation will finally be over.
And just to clarify, once the system is in service, meaning it's on, then the township will consider, depending, to release the permits for building and not at the certificate of final completion.
Right,
Assuming we make the vote.
Yes.
So let's
assuming-
assume we all voted for option 2. Once the system is put into service, those building permits will be issued for 4 houses.
Not for all of them. Well,
Or-
as many
Or
as-
more. Or more.
Whatever. is on.
Yeah, how many ever is
Whatever,
left?
right.
Yeah.
And then the certificate, yeah, so that's one piece we have to have
Set state.
said. So when I read the motion, it's the right number. But building permits, and then that'll, yes, where were we saying? So system we put into service, and then the building permits can be issued.
Are the 4 already reviewed?
Yeah.
So there's 4 already reviewed.
Yeah,
but
they
then-
just have been a holding pattern.
Yeah.
That's what I've been told,
Right, okay.
and that's whispered down the alley, but I think that's accurate.
Yeah, our permits were applied in mid summer. From May, I think they were with the township.
Yeah.
At least I know I'm one of them.
Yeah, so any additional ones might take a little bit more time, but it'd just be a review time.
Yep.
But we'll key our guy up to say it's coming. Like, yeah,
Okay.
it's not business as usual. It's about, the drill. Right.
Okay.
But it all depends in 2 weeks.
That's right. Stay tuned.
That's what
It's a cliffhanger.
That's what he's here.
Dum, dum, dum.
I got to keep them coming back.
Well, I will say that I've said it a couple times now, but Stan's awesome. I appreciate
That's
all the
great.
work he's been putting out. And I appreciate you working with Keystone and your future residents here, because obviously they're very eager to come in and join your community.
Yeah, that's great. We're looking forward to having you.
Get the systems up and running.
All right. Hey, thank you. So I've got one more quick piece of business. It's not going to take too long to talk about, maybe 5 minutes, but this is on the Big Elk Creek Preserve. So the master plan that DCNR has put forward has a comment period where we can comment on the master plan. And I got a phone call from John Lawrence, and then I reached out to Antia about whether or not the township should submit something to John Hollis, and there's another, it's not Cindy Dunn, but it's someone else on John's team, for just to make a comment before it's this comment section is closed. One other piece of information is that Antia had mentioned that she felt this may have been intended just for task force people, not for just the general public. But I feel as a township, it might make sense for us to say something. I did send an email out to everybody, if you had some specific comments. But one of the things I was thinking about, and this was something we just started talking about a couple hours before the meeting, is maybe I just write something like, Franklin Township is concerned with development of Big Elk Creek State Park. We felt that this should be considered as a preserve, and then copy the letter that we already signed stating as much, and just leave it at that, versus saying, a bunch of new comments that maybe just be repetitive.
Or just saying nothing.
Or just say nothing, right? So early on, Guy had mentioned we don't want to come on too strongly against this DCNR issue as a township. As individuals, it's one thing, but as a township, it's something else, because we need to be supportive of our community, and we don't want to treat, and they're a member of our community, and I have to be aware that we can't be unfair and single people out. So we don't want to come up and say, hey, no matter what you guys do, we're against it, because that's not the position the township is going to take. And I don't think that's the position the township has, is that we're completely combative against DCNR. But we feel like it might be worthwhile to say something on behalf of the township, that there's an opinion that we should consider keeping this as a preserve. And it's nothing that we already haven't said.
But I like the idea of just taking some key points out of the letter. I think there might be, we want to keep it as a preserve, and I think there might be a sentence that we can pull from the letter saying why. And then
And still attach the letter.
Yeah,
Still
still
attached,
attached, yeah, because we're not changing, our position is consistent.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to hear what Dawn and Betsy think, because you guys are much closer to it.
No, I absolutely agree, because that's been the theme throughout the whole thing, that, we would still like it to be called a preserve and treat it as a preserve, and then pull something out of the letter that we've already written. I
Okay.
think that would be right on the money.
Agree.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Why they won't call it a preserve, I don't understand, even though they said that calling it a preserve doesn't change it legally.
I know. Yeah,
But we won't do it.
the concern that I have, and because the words that DCNR uses is that they're in the forever business. And my thought is, well, if you're in the forever business, you better preserve it, because there's nothing more forever than a preserve.
Mhm.
But it is what it is.
That's
So
what they're afraid of.
yeah. So yeah. So all right. So that's what I'll do. I'll take a look at it, and I'll send an email to John Hollis and I forget the other woman's name. And we'll send it to them by Thursday. So Melissa, if you could do me, geez, Stacy, you're Stacy still, right? Okay. Stacy, I know getting
Cindy
late.
Dunn.
8:30, and that's not Cindy. It's someone in John's office. It's not Cindy. Someone
No.
else. Yeah. Do you have a copy of the signed letter somewhere? Because I only have the unsigned version electronically. I don't know if you can just scan it for me and send it to me, because I don't have a copy of the
PDF
signed.
it,
Yeah, just PDF and send it. I think I only have an unsigned version. All right, thank you. So Vince, any final thoughts from tonight?
Trinkus, the other person, John Hollis and Casey Trinko.
Casey. Yes, thank
That's
you,
it.
Betsy.
Good
Casey.
job, Betsy.
Yeah, thank you, Betsy. So Vince, any final thoughts?
On Lexington Point?
Sure.
Well, no, I think where you're headed is again, given the status of the plant itself, I think that's a reasonable position.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But how do we stand? Stan, you're still with us, right? That was your idea.
I
I mean, how many weeks ago? So, but hey, we got there. That we haven't officially voted.
I echo exactly what Vince just said.
Great. All right, well, there are no members of the public, so no public comment tonight. So I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:24 PM.
I'll second it.
All right, thanks, Jim. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries 5-0. Good night.